A logical next step in developing my workshop was making a press, because lately I needed it way too often, and bending pipes by hand just wasn't cutting it anymore. And at that time, I often needed to roll pipes as well. The end of a pipe with a diameter of 34 millimeters and a wall thickness of 6 to 9 millimeters. I got really tired of doing this with a little jack, and of course I wasn't even considering it anymore. Just making a simple frame for a jack wasn't an option for me. I've been dreaming of a real press for a long time. A press with a hydraulic station, where you just push a button and it does everything you want. So I started with the basics. I went to several metal depots, not just one, to find something strong enough so that in the future, if I need more power, I could build a really powerful press. This thing is gigantic. Right here, it weighs 150 kilograms, and now I need to cut it in half again. For that, I have a Dnipro. Angle brander. At the very last moment, I thought, cool, I haven't even hurt myself once with this beast. But just as a piece fell at the last second, I reflexively tried to catch it, and my finger ended up right under it. I was lucky I didn't just break my phalanx here. This is a 140 angle bar with a 10mm wheel. I'm thinking of making a square tube out of it and making 2 vertical posts to which the top part will be welded. This channel bar right here. And of course, there are 2 halves here. One for the top and 2 halves. That's gonna be great. Since these angle bars were far from the best quality, but that's what we managed to find at the time. And during welding, we had to straighten the angles themselves in the press, so that we could make a proper, convenient square tube out of them. Vlad, by the way, Max is welding for the first time in his life. Yeah, come on, don't freak out. Damn, you missed a bit. Alright, what, did you decide to kill it or something? That's fine. This small press was just the right width for our square tube, so we had to knock it out like this. Also, after deciding on the height of the press, I cut all the material to size before starting the main work. In the process, I had to go to a friend's place to use another press to straighten out my angles because they wouldn't fit in my tabletop press. You think it sounds cool, right? I'm telling you, it's awesome. The flywheel is so cool. Also, at that time, Max was helping me with the current project, and we agreed that he would weld the frame because the welds there aren't too critical, especially if we're talking about the clean vertical 2-profile pipes. And in the process, he'll be learning how to weld. For every weld you make, there's a candy for you right here. Also, this angle bar was concreted in from several sides. And I made an attachment from some kind of chisel, I think, for the hammer drill. And with it, I was chipping off all that stuff. But let me tell you, what's better? Look for good quality materials so you don't have to stress later with all that cleaning and straightening. It takes up a lot of time. It's just not worth it. Then I marked out where I would have the holes for my support. Since the holes here are large in diameter, I had a choice. Either buy a hole saw and try to do it myself on the machine, which I really didn't want to do, or take another route. Ask a friend of mine, go to their workshop and use their drill press to make proper holes. As you can see, I drilled 2 through holes at once, aligning them to a single plane. That is, we drill all the holes only on one plane, and from that plane, we use it as a reference point in the future. We rely on it when assembling the machine. I drill holes in the vertical posts. There are also 2 holes in the carriage, spaced 31 millimeters apart. To align the frame of the future press, I used my machine, which is quite level, by placing 2 channels under the 2 lower pipes, which serve as a kind of base, and the 2 upper channels are pressed flush against them. At the same time, of course, you really need to keep a close eye on the frame's geometry, checking the distance between the holes, because later on, cutting this whole machine apart would be very difficult. The intense sound of welding. Absolutely delicious. Now, I'm making this bracket. Maybe it's a bit rough and ready, but that's just how it is. And I'm gonna weld this tank onto it. Here's the filler neck where the oil is poured in. This is an adapter for a car oil filter. By the way, the tube needs to go all the way to the bottom, otherwise the oil will foam up. Right here, we'll have a gauge showing how much oil is in the tank itself. I decided to put the tank on this side because the distributor will be a bit lower and it will also stick out here. And on top will be my engine with the NSH pump. Now I'm going to attach the tank here. Thanks to the level gauge. Right now I'm aligning these two legs in all planes. Let's see how everything was scanned. Although, considering how uneven my floor is, it doesn't really matter to me. How crookedly it will be welded. But still, I need to make it straight. Maybe someday I'll even pass the press on to someone so they can set it up and it'll stand level on the floor. Now I just need to do a bit of work. The moment has finally come. Now we're gonna put this whole thing on the floor. And finally, I'll see how tall it is and how massive it looks in my workshop. I'm seeing stars. And this is how all this beauty looks. Its height is 1,900 millimeters, and when it was lying here on the table, for some reason I thought it would be small. But actually, now that it's standing here, it turns out it's quite a massive thing. 2 axles are machined for the Springer fork. Right now, their sizes don't fit anywhere for me. And on top, I cut, drilled, and welded a cold rolled pipe. And these will be the pins. Now I'll machine them and everything will look just perfect. Right now, I'm working on installing the thing. The hydraulic cylinder has these holes where the pins are inserted. In my case, these pins will serve as mounts. So it will go in here, the pins will be inserted, and it will rest on top. But just look at this massive thing. You could basically, if you wanted, put about 100 tons in here. This 35mm plate should rest against the channel bar. I still haven't decided how I'll keep the hydraulic cylinder from shifting side to side or back and forth. Actually, I was planning to make another hydraulic cylinder, which would be placed on the side to create a separate pipe bender. Looking back from the future, I realized it was for the best that I didn't bother with it, because it would have taken a lot of time, and in the end, I wouldn't have needed it. Now, I'm welding the legs of the press, welding with rods. Sometimes I like welding these kinds of structures with an electrode, because they're not so picky about rust and paint. That's why it's much easier to weld with them on these kinds of structures. Now, by rotating it like this, I'm going to weld this joint. Here's a little cover with a lambskin lining. I use it when I'm welding. These are the kinds of parts you can't mess up with a semi-automatic welder. Well, this is how it turned out. That's how it came out, Baz. I couldn't manage to do it continuously 3 times. Stats. Alright, take a look at what's going on with this system here. This is my first time making this whole thing, so I don't even know if it's gonna work at all. I decided to connect everything with a coupling from an MT. It's got a bit of a wobble here. At first, I got scared that I welded it badly. All this stuff, but then I clamped it in the chuck. Again, everything I get. There's some wobble, maybe about 1/10 of a millimeter. It's the coupling itself, so honestly that's not surprising. Here are pieces from the MT con. One piece is welded here, right onto the same thing that was on this shaft. An electric motor, which I suspect was honestly stolen from some factory because it looks like it's from some kind of machine tool. Here is also a part from the anti-con, into which I welded a long 13mm nut. It fits perfectly onto the spline of the NSH pump, NSH4 pump. It turns out that this pump is quite problematic, and in the future it will be replaced with an NSH6 because the NSH4 has been discontinued. Maybe the motor will need to be replaced, or maybe the pump itself will need to be changed. It's all experimental. If it works, great. If not, we'll have to change something here. Oh, and one more thing. I drilled out the holes from 18 to 20 millimeters with a milling cutter, so there would not be any load on this bearing, or on the other pump in general. I decided to place it on that side, not on top, so that if something bursts, it won't hit me in the face. So for safety reasons, I did it this way. Honestly, I'm really curious myself to see how it's gonna work. So I suggest we keep going, and now I'm going to wash the hydraulic cylinders so I can assemble them. By the way, we made this tool to roll pipes for the project with the forks. Take a look here. So this is for the main hydraulic cylinder. There's this little nub welded onto it, into which another nub is inserted and clamped, and it's secured with this little bolt. Here's the pipe. So this is a permanent part of the hydraulic cylinder, and this one can be replaced as it wears out, or if you need to make a different die or punch. All of this can be used. I don't know how, but somehow I lost them. The footage of making this adapter for the car filter. You can easily find this information on the internet. Here's another fitting I added for oil supply. Now I'll give everything a good wash, both inside and out. The distributor itself was given to me from a tractor, and it was almost new. It was taken apart once to replace something, but overall, all the parts in it are in excellent condition. But for the press, I think it's just junk. Don't be stingy, buy a Bulgarian distributor, you'll really enjoy it. As you might remember, I had a distributor here from an MTZ or UMZ, I can't really tell them apart. I kept moving that whole big thing back and forth, looked at it all, and realized I didn't want it because it's just two. Well, and a tractor is probably fine, but here it just doesn't fit at all. It's kind of archaic, I don't even know what to call it. So I bought this kind of distributor from Bentley. We all know it well already. Just a single section. It works. There's nothing more to say. You can just press it with one finger. It doses, meaning you press it a little, and the hydraulic cylinders move a little. You give it a bit more, it goes further. Here's its marking, and this is what it looks like from the back. You can turn all of this back and forth here. As you might remember, I needed it for 2 sections, but now I only need it for 1 section, and I decided to go ahead and install it after all. I don't regret buying it at all, both visually and by feel. It's a really cool thing. We'll see how it performs in action. So it comes out of the other pump and we'll go in right here. Unfortunately, there are no adapters available anywhere in the city, so I'll have to come up with something myself here. And here, the hoses from the hydraulic cylinder for lowering and raising the cylinder itself will be connected. These 3 hoses cost me 1,200 grivnas. That's cheaper than buying them at a tractor supply store. The tractor ones are really thick, and that's what was hanging here before, just these big sausages. But with these, you can set it up so they hang neatly here and nothing will happen. They won't be an eyesore. Here you can see the year this baler was made, so that's still there. Basically, once the hoses are connected, you can move on to the electrical part, and after that, you can turn it on and start testing. Honestly, I don't believe it'll work out so that there won't be any oil leaking from anywhere. It just seems unbelievable because there are so many connections, so much going on here. And it just seems to me that somewhere it's gonna start leaking and I'll have to take everything apart. There'll be a ton of oil on the floor, just like it always happens. Here I left a metric fitting, and over there I cut a 1/2-inch thread. I'm connecting everything using these kinds of rings. With this little rubber ring, everything fits in really tightly. This is what the fitting looks like with that washer. It makes for a very tight touch-in. I bought a few more of these fittings, welded on some washers, and turned them on the lathe. And in the same way, with this little washer, I'll be screwing everything together. Now there will be a proper surface here. Because before, it was pressing against these ribs and the result was really poor. Now I'm going to pour in the oil. If nothing leaks from the tank, that'll already be a good result. By the way, here's how the indicator works. The oil level indicator. The hole there is small, so that's why it takes so long to catch up. I hooked it up haphazardly for now, just to get it started. I don't know if the engine works or if the mechanical part works because I didn't want to start it dry. NSH comp. Hey, expendable Dakin here. If you finish your shot, is it still recording? Ready? I was actually really happy to get the press running, but when we started testing it, I realized something was off. Or rather, I started to realize that something was wrong. And it's not even about how the rod is jerking right now, because that's just the system bleeding out the air. And that's totally normal. But it's about its power. It just didn't have any power. It struggled with everything it did. It couldn't even break a simple piston, but I couldn't quite figure out if that was normal, or if I messed up somewhere in the calculations, or if something was wrong with how it was working. My first serious suspicions arose when I couldn't press it down. There's a 12-ton jack there, but in reality it's maybe 6 or 7 tons at best. The burst valve didn't go off, and that's when I realized something was wrong. And I think it took me about 3 weeks to make the press, working on it every single day. It's really unpleasant to realize that you didn't succeed, especially since at that time we were working on the project, on my Springer forks. I had taken on a lot of orders. The deadline was already tight, and then it turned out that all of this was for nothing. A complete waste. Even though I had very little money at the time, I still decided to take the risk. And right now, you're looking at the bastard who caused all these problems. By replacing the pump with an NH6, since the NH4 is no longer produced, everything was resolved. And all this happened because I had some used one, NH4. And now you can see the difference for yourself. Video sound. Yo, main video, check this out. Yo, today, damn, this thing's got some serious power, man. That's how I broke up all this aluminum for myself. Before, all this was done with a little hammer and an angle grinder. But now, before casting, you can break up pieces like this, and specifically throw them into the crucible. I added some electronics to the press, finished everything that was needed, and I also painted it. Or maybe I'll insert it from the side like this, or maybe I'll use the mags to insert it. By the way, this is a rare case when the machine is just being made and gets painted right away. Usually, it waits a few more years for that process. I have finished painting the press and started making different attachments for it. I needed a thing like that to crimp pipes. The main thing was also a shoe to make a pipe bender and bend pipes on the press. At that time, I think I was bending 80 pipes. Each pipe needed 2 bends, and they had to be identical in the same plane. All of this was done using stops. Overall, this will be covered in a separate video about Springer forks. But overall, I was very satisfied with the press. The press turned out absolutely fantastic. Like I said, after all the work I used to have to do before, this was just a pleasure. You just press it, and it simply works. Unfortunately, just today as I'm editing this video and starting the render, the press was sold. I'm no longer in Ukraine. The workshop you saw today no longer exists, and it's unlikely it ever will again. At least not in the form you saw it. I really did like that press a lot. Today, it found a new owner, and I hope it serves him as long as he needs it to.